You're listening to Refracted World with Terry Geo, episode 16. Are we still talking about COVID? Okay, so I'm going to start a few weeks ago when I was invited to my brother's birthday party. I went, we had a great time, and then as I was coming back home, he called me to say that he'd just tested positive for COVID. Now, being a responsible adult, Ken and I then self-isolated for, 8 days because I'd been exposed to it, and then other people from the party started coming down with COVID as well. And, it's not like I just said hello to Max. I spent time at his home before the party. At the party, we were singing together, we were hugging, we were very close throughout the party. And, the exposure was high. And so I didn't want to go and visit my neighbours. I didn't want to go to the gym. I didn't want to go out for my appointments. So I cancelled everything because I was sure that I would be passing on COVID. I didn't want to do that. And so we kept checking ourselves every other day and negative. And so I put out a video talking about this on social media, basically saying that, I've been exposed to COVID. Hopefully I won't get it. And then 8 days later, I tested again and said, look, I don't have COVID. How amazing is that? It looks like the vaccine works. And then I talked about how I thought the vaccine would help. I know the vaccine would help reduce the effects of COVID, but I didn't really understand the shielding part because I know that was talked about. I know it can happen some of the time, but I had the vaccine in December. I was exposed to it in February and I didn't get it. So there must be some kind of shielding in there. And then afterwards I looked online, and although that's not the principal reason for it, obviously the principal reason is to stop it being fatal, but it can have that effect. And that seems to have happened with Ken and I, which is great. And so I put a video out just saying this. And I now believe that I am from a different universe. Now, I know that may seem a bit left field and like, where's he going with this? But in 2020, Ken and I locked down 1 week before everyone else locked down. Because I was watching the news, I could see what was happening in China, and then in Italy, we could see how bad COVID was. And I could see that we were going to be locked down next. We went to the supermarket, no toilet roll, as we all know, we had to get it online. And so I stocked up on tins of fruits and vegetables and things like that. And Ken and I locked down 1 week before. Ken thought I was being stupid. Ken said I was being ridiculous. It's not going to be that bad, blah, blah, blah. 1 week later, we're all locked down and he apologises. Because, of course, it was that bad. We had several millions of deaths from COVID. It was everywhere and everyone was scared because we didn't know anything about this virus. And unfortunately, I have a chronic condition, which means I'm immunosuppressed. So I was on the list of can't go out the house. And so at the time, we were living in a basement flat, no light, mold all over the walls. We had rats in the garden. We had mice in the house, in the kitchen, and we had ants behind the radiator in the summer. It was awful. And it just got worse and worse while we were living there. And people had been around to try and fix things, but then Virgin Media will dig up the road and the mice will come back in and blah, blah, blah. Lots of different problems. But the worst one for us was it being a basement flat with no light, and we couldn't go outside for 14 months. And when I tell you we went stir crazy, that's an understatement. My creative brain, my always on, always creative brain stopped functioning and took over with survival mode. And all I could think about was, we need to survive this. We need to get through this. We need to hope that there's going to be a vaccine, because there was so much talk of, there might not even be a vaccine. We don't have vaccines for everything. And I'm thinking, without a vaccine, what are we going to do? How can we live in a world where there's this killer virus there? And so Ken worked from home every day and I just went mad, really. I think I actually went mad. And, we all know about having video calls with family and friends and all that. And just thank goodness that Disney Plus came out that year, because I watched so many Disney shows in 2020. And then, of course, just 10 months later, the entire scientific community from around the world came together to create a vaccine faster than they ever have before. And they were doing human trials in December of 2020. it was amazing to watch. I mean, I know we'd all been in lockdown and it seemed like an eternity, but actually in that space of time, it's amazing that they got that vaccine out. And we went through every single week. We'd be standing outside and clapping in our tiny little one square piece of land outside the back garden, back door, and we'd be clapping for the NHS, and you could hear the rumbling of claps all over, and you'd see on the news people all over the world clapping for their health services, and it was just this amazing feeling that although we're all trapped in our homes, we're all going through this one horrendous thing together as a worldwide community. And I honestly believe that this one event would bring us all together as a species because we'd all been through the same thing. Now, we didn't get the vaccine until, because we were on the first of the list, because obviously the government had said we had to stay inside. And I think it was May 2021 when we first got the vaccine, I think. And so that had been 14 months. And we went outside in masks and gloves, and I had that visor thing, and I was really scared about going anywhere near anyone. We had to walk to where we got the injection, and it was really good. They were all standing, away from each other. I think it was 1.2 meters or something. I can't remember. It seems like a different lifetime now. And yeah, so we had the injection, then we had to wait a few weeks for the next injection, and then we had to wait again, and then we could go out. And the first time we went out was on my birthday in June, and we went to the Ivy for a meal because we hadn't been out in, by that time, 15 months. And it was just weird, really weird. I mean, we got a taxi there because we didn't want to use public transport. And when we got to the restaurant, everyone had to be spaced out, and everyone had to wear their masks until they were at the table. And I mean, if you'd have told any of this just 1 year before the pandemic, no one would have believed it. No one would have said we'd have done it. No one would have said the governments would have actually locked us down. And yet we did. We all went through this. One massive global event together. That was just 3 years ago. And I believe that some point in either late 2021 or early 2022, I and a portion of the population of Earth was mixed up in two different universes and brought together on one Earth. Because it's the only way I can explain how utterly ridiculous and blasé half the population are when it comes to COVID and vaccines. How else can you describe and understand how absolutely ridiculous people are being? COVID's a hoax. Oh, the governments only want to give you a vaccine so they can inject you with nanoprobes and track where you're going. And, oh, how stupid for you to take the vaccine. You're going to be dead in 5 years. And these aren't things I'm making up. These are things that have actually been reported as people saying. You may even know somebody who says things like this. And I was at a birthday party a couple of weeks ago for my brother, his 40th. And while I was there, we had a great time, and I'd spent time at his house before the party. We'd all gone together. We did a duet of Circle of Life together. We hugged. We were spending a lot of time together because he's my only brother. But on the journey home, he calls me to tells me that he's just tested positive for COVID and he feels absolutely awful. And over the next few days, quite a few other people from the party come down with COVID as well. And I'm thinking, well, that's it. We have to self-isolate. So Kin and I did. For 8 days, we self-isolated. I cancelled all my gym appointments, all my normal appointments. I didn't want to see any of my friends or my neighbours because I didn't want to potentially give them COVID. Because although we may survive it now, it's still a pretty awful illness. And so we didn't go out. And I tested myself repeatedly every other day. And I put a video out saying, oh, this is, had a great time at my brother's party, but now look, I've probably got COVID, so I'm just waiting for that. So I explained that I'm going to be making a lot of videos in a row and then post them out every day. So if you see me in the same t-shirt, you know why. So I put that video out, and then after 8 days, I still didn't have it. So I made another video going, absolutely amazing. I don't have COVID. Thank goodness. I'm really glad I had the vaccine because although we all know that it does reduce the effectiveness of COVID and it also protects you a lot more from fatalities, there's also in some cases where it can shield you from catching COVID in the first place. Now, I'd read about this, but I didn't know how true it was or how effective it was, And looking online, it's not the main thing that the vaccine does, obviously, but it can have that effect. And that must be the case for Ken and I, because I think 12 or 15 people from the party came down with COVID. And even though I was, spending a lot of time with my brother, we didn't catch it. And we have the vaccine. And so I was really pleased. So I put out this nice video. And then, of course, I get the comments. Propaganda drivel, Mark said. What about the side effects? Laughs out loud. You hide away for 8 days because you're scared of getting a cold? Silly man. Someone else called Sarah said, being sarcastic. I flipping hope so, because I've not been vaccinated and I've never caught it. And another, I'm the only unvaccinated member of my family and the only one who hasn't had COVID. Every test I've done has been negative, never even had a single symptom. If it's a shield like you say, should be the other way round. Still drinking the Kool-Aid, said Filiabelli. And the last one I'm going to read, there was a lot more. I could carry on reading them for ages, but the last one I'm going to read, everyone else I've blocked, but this one I've left on the profile because I hope she reads it. And the comment I got was, lots of innocent people died and are still dying from this jab. From this jab? Still, you feel okay to make out you're special. Not spelled correctly. No, you're just, not spelled correctly, not aware of the chemical warfare that is reeling through your veins. Not spelled correctly. Count yourself lucky you have no underlying illness. I do. You're just presuming I don't. They are the people it killed first. Yes, I know, that's why I have the bloody vaccine. It will stay in you, changes to your biological body. I mean, obviously, this person is illiterate. I mean, that's obvious. The spelling, the multiple spaces, the lack of spaces, the lack of punctuation, terrible grammar, and bad wording. But apart from all of that, I'm shocked. I'm genuinely shocked that people still believe the injection is bad for you. I mean, there was another one that said, oh, I'll be dead in 5 years. I mean, I just deleted that straight away. I didn't even save that to my phone. All of these I've snapshotted, but that one I didn't. Oh, you'll be he said, oh, that was right. He said, I'm bookmarking this page and coming back in 5 years to see if you're still here. Because and then reeled off all these stupid illnesses that he said comes from the jab, which has no basis in reality. But anyway, back to this one that I've left on my profile. You have the entirety of human knowledge at your fingertips and you're spouting this nonsense as if it's fact. Please do yourself and the people around you a massive favour and read the scientific papers on this, not the gossip on social media. Also, no one in the UK can get the vaccine anymore without having a serious medical condition or are over 65 years old. I'm not over 65. Please think before you post misinformation. They didn't respond. But how can we live in a world, in the same world, where we all went through this horrific pandemic, where we all had to be stuck in our homes for weeks, months, and over a year in our case, to have the amazing revelation that in I think it was just 10 months, we had a vaccine made and was being tested on human beings. And 18 months later, the world is vaccinated against this illness. How can that not be a shining example of what we can do as a global community? How can that not be some shared lived experience that we can all remember and learn from? And instead, we've gone back to how we were before, spreading misinformation, lies, and basically crap. We are spouting rubbish as if it's facts, and people get into their head that the vaccine's dangerous. There is no proof that the vaccine is dangerous at all. There are people in my country, in the United Kingdom, so this isn't just Americans, there are people in the UK who definitely believe that the reason the government brought out the vaccine so fast is so they can inject us with nanoprobes and they can track our movements at all times. Now, I'm telling you all now, nanoprobes don't exist. They're a science fiction thing only. If they did exist, they would cost a stupid amount of money to put into every single person in a vaccine, and they don't need to. You have a mobile phone. You're likely listening to this on your mobile phone. Everyone can track your movements with your phone. every data. If you've got a smartwatch, it knows your heart rate, it knows where you are, it knows what you've been doing, it knows where you've been visiting, it knows what websites you're looking at, it knows everything about you. The governments don't need to inject you with nanoprobes. It's just ridiculous. And when you take a step back from the conspiracy theories and stupid right-wing talking points on social media, if you just take a step back and think for a second, you'll realize that, of course, that's all nonsense. And then remember that millions of people died from COVID. And then remember what we all went through, not just as a nation, but as a species. This is something all human beings have had to deal with and still have to deal with. And when it comes to the vaccine, without that, I fear that Ken and I might still be stuck in our tiny one-bedroom basement flat, and the mold had probably taken over by now. We'd just be mold creatures. And so, on one hand, am I from a different universe, an alternate universe, where that shared experience gave us enlightenment, but then for some reason we merged together with our timeline, this timeline, and so half the population understands COVID and the other don't? Or is it that human beings just love conspiracy theories, and when they don't understand the science of something, they just turn to lies and misinformation because it's easier to digest, it's easy to understand, and also, if you get a piece of information that's different from the mainstream, maybe you can think, oh, I have knowledge that other people don't have. What if I share this? Oh, I can tell people about this. Oh, it'll make me feel special. It'll make me look special. People will think of me better. Maybe that's part of it. And if that's the case, grow up. We all went through COVID. We're all still living with it now. I have a chronic illness, which means I have to have the vaccine. In the UK, only people with chronic illnesses or are over the age of 65, I think it is, can get the vaccine. Everyone else just has to live with it because they're healthy, in inverted commas. And so I take the vaccine so I can walk about the streets every day and I can talk to people and I don't have to live in fear all the time. And that's what the vaccine's done for me and billions of people like me. Because it's not just the UK, it's the entire world. And it upsets me that I post a nice video about not having COVID and I get so many negative comments back. And because of that, I've stopped posting on social media every day. I think it's actually over a year. In the video I said 6 months, but on reflection, I think it's been over a year. I've been posting at least one video every single day. So 365 videos plus. I mean, there were already quite a few videos on there. So maybe there's, on my TikTok channel, there's probably about 500 videos, which is also on my Instagram and Facebook. And I did it every single day because everyone said, keep putting out the videos and consistency is key. And so I did. And I've talked about many different things and done funny ones. I've done emotional ones, just videos every single day to keep consistency up. And I didn't do this for money, obviously, because you don't really get paid unless you're into the millions of views, and I never was. I did it to basically keep my brain active because I lost a lot of time during lockdown. My brain wasn't functioning as a creative brain anymore. I couldn't write. I couldn't do anything constructive. And when I came out of it, I was totally shaken. And it's the reason I wrote Blink, and it's the reason I performed it in Edinburgh. And so carrying on with social media, it meant that I'm quite good on camera. And I like talking. As you know, you listen to my podcast every week. And I like having an outlet for my creativity. Because when I'm just writing all the time, it's just me. Writing it can be very lonely because I can't talk to anybody else. I can't even listen to music when I'm writing. And so it's just me and my keyboard and my thoughts. And so having the outlet of doing videos on social media, it meant that I could keep that interaction with the world out there and I could listen to, read the comments. But unfortunately, whatever I put out as a gay guy, a lot of my content talks about my life, or talks about human rights and equal rights, blah blah blah. You get a lot of hate for that, and even if you talk about COVID, you get a lot of hate, and it's just numbing for a time, because you keep pushing through. You think, no, I can get through this. I can do this. Just ignore them, block the trolls, block the trolls. But after a while, you get to the point where you think, am I getting any more enjoyment out of this? Because when the amount of comments come back that are hate-filled or trolling, it just makes you think and wonder, do I need to keep doing this? And I'm lucky that I started this podcast 16 weeks ago, because now this is my outlet to be able to talk with people. And actually, it seems to be being well received, which I didn't know if it would be. I always knew it was going to be a mixed bag of my interests and my life stories being poured out into the microphone. And I didn't know if there was an audience for that, but it turns out there is. And that's truly amazing. I'm getting a lot of positive reviews back. I'm, getting into different charts now in podcasts around the world, and I have dedicated listeners who tune in every week. And I've also just been accepted into the Spotify podcasters program, which means now I can get subscribers as well, and I can make subscriber episodes and talk about behind the scenes things as well. Oh, this is turning into an advert. It wasn't meant to be turning into an advert at all, but basically, because I now have a good section of listeners every single month, it means that I can now tie it into my Patreon, which I've set up. So I don't actually know how it works. I've been reading up on it, but you click on it through Spotify, and then you go to Patreon, and I've set it all up on Patreon, but I don't know how it links. So I might actually do it through Spotify as well, because it's like £3 a month. It's not expensive. And then for that, I'll put out subscriber only episodes, which would be nice, because then I'll be able to talk to my actual fans and talk about the issues that they'd like to hear as well. And I've set up a Discord channel, so people of a different tier can chat to me and suggest different ideas for podcasts. Even, I'm up for interviewing people as well, if there's, if it ties in with the ethos of the show. And that's amazing for me to be able to say that the podcast is going well. And of course, I'm still not making any money from it. If I get subscribers, maybe I can. But everything I've done in my life has never been about money. And if you've listened to any of my podcasts before that, you'll know that, because I've never made any money from anything I've done. But I've enjoyed everything I've done. And when I don't enjoy it anymore, I stop. And that's why I've stopped doing the videos on social media every day, because I wasn't enjoying it anymore. I was getting so much hate, and it just disappoints me. It disappoints me that we live in a world where there is so much hate and misinformation and negativity being spread, when we're all one species. Every single life is unique and as important as the next life. And no one is more important than somebody else. Everyone is important, every single person. And so it really upsets me when you see these millions of blank profiles just going online to troll. We wouldn't accept masked people doing this in the real world, so why are we allowing it online? Because although you can delete or forget about one or two comments, when you're producing content every single day, you are getting hundreds, if not thousands, of comments that are really hurtful and bullying and make you feel sick to your stomach in some cases. And when you're getting the onslaught every single day of your life, then it becomes a problem. And we now live in a world where if you don't produce something every single day, the algorithm puts you back to the bottom of the pile, which is why everyone keeps pumping out content every day, because that's how social media is set up. Every single person has to put out something every day, and they actually advise to produce 3 videos a day. And many people do. And the amount of time that takes, I know how long it takes to make 1 video a day. It's not just the making the video. I can usually do it in 2 or 3 takes, depending on if there's a script involved and I have to memorize it. But you have to think up the ideas. You have to get the lighting, the microphone, the setting, and then afterwards you have to edit. Then you have to choose the music. Then you have to put it out onto every single platform with the hashtags on, and every single site demands different types of hashtags. And you have to put a bio in there, and everything. Everything has to be done before you put it out. And I know how long that takes every day to do one. So if you're doing 3, that's basically every single day of your life. And so what you've now got are people that are sitting down for 2 days a month and just recording back to back and then pumping them out throughout the month. And this is why, if I've noticed this more in the past 6 months, but when you're scrolling through TikTok, there is so much rubbish on there. I mean, absolute rubbish. It's just people who have got recorded programs or clips from recorded films that they're pumping out there, or music videos, or images with some popular music playing in the background. And it's just non-stop. And then, of course, you've got all your adverts in there and your TikTok shops. And it's just, there's hardly any good content there anymore. And so my plan now is I'm not going to abandon TikTok. Of course I've not. I've invested a lot of time into it. But I can't do the video a day thing. And because I was putting a lot of my self into this, and a lot of the issues were really important. And when people are just rubbishing them, it's just, what's the point? So my thought is now, focus more on the podcast, which I'm doing, and possibly make long form videos for YouTube, which is probably more my area anyway. But for the time being, I'm enjoying talking to all of you. And thank you so much for tuning in every week and listening. And as I've said before, I have an entire year's worth of content ready to go. I just need to record it all. And yeah, if you'd like to, I don't know how it works. Like I said, I don't know if it's LinkedIn or anything, but if you'd like to support me on Patreon, I will be making some subscriber-only episodes very shortly. And yeah, it'd be good to actually chat with you on Discord as well and get your thoughts on the podcast and what you'd like to see coming up next. Because as you know, it's a bit of a mixed bag. It's Terry's life and interests. It should have been called that rather than Refracted World. And yeah, anyway, thank you so much. And I will be here talking to you all again the same time next week. Until then, take care.